Good afternoon. We're just going to give folks a moment to come in from the waiting room and connect to audio. As a reminder, when you are entering from the waiting room, please do remain on mute unless or until you are speaking or testifying before the entertainment division. Good afternoon. This is an administrative hearing. And once again, just a reminder to please remain on mute unless or until you are appearing or testifying. Good afternoon. This is an administrative hearing before the Mayor's Office of Consumer Affairs and Licensing. Today is Thursday, November 3rd, 2022. This hearing is being conducted pursuant to certain temporary amendments to the open meeting law. That is what allows us to meet virtually. This hearing is being recorded and will be posted to the City of Boston's website. We are joined today by the Executive Director of the Mayor's Office of Consumer Affairs and Licensing, Kathleen Joyce, and Director of Operations, Rebecca Fu. I will read the item on this afternoon's agenda. I will then ask who is present on behalf of the licensee and who is present on behalf of the Boston Police Department, after which I will swear in all parties. The police report will then be read into the record, followed by a statement by the licensee or their representative, and questions from the Executive Director and Director of Operations. The only item on this afternoon's agenda is GSTH Investment Group LLC doing business as Bijou, located at 51 to 67 Stewart Street. Date of the incident was October 2nd, 2022. Loud music emanating beyond premise into a budding building at 63 decibels at 1:50 a.m. Who is present on behalf of the licensee?
Good afternoon, Mr. Green, and also Madam Chair, Stephen Miller, McDermott, Quilty and Miller. Also with me is Mete Aslan, and we also have the property owner is also here, along with two sound engineers, Ron Taveri and Jeff Fullerton.
Great. Thank you very much. And if anyone who is planning on testifying this afternoon, if you could please have your camera on so we can swear you in prior to providing testimony. And who is present on behalf of the Boston Police Department?
Sergeant Detective William Gallagher.
Detective Hernandez if needed.
Thank you. And are there any other individuals with firsthand knowledge of the alleged incident who wish to testify this afternoon? Thank you. Ma'am, could you please identify yourself? Or just raise your hand?
Lauren Ingham. I'm a resident of Ava Theater District, and I have some written testimony from some residents as well.
Great. Thank you very much. All who are planning on providing testimony this afternoon, please raise your right hand. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. Sergeant Detective Gallagher, if you could please proceed with reading the police report into the record.
Yes. Good afternoon. On 10/2/2022 at 1:53 a.m., I responded to 45 Stewart Street in the Theater District for reports of a radio call for loud music coming from the abutting building. I went to 45 Stewart Street, which is the Ava building, proceeded to the 10th floor, and I met with the caller. I conducted a sound reading at that time, and the sound reading came back with 63 decibels, which was mainly bass that could be heard from the center of that 10th floor apartment. After 11 o'clock, the City of Boston noise ordinance forbids noise to exceed 50 decibels. I was with Officer Crespo, who's in the Alpha 435. Proceeded downstairs to Bijou, where I met Mete Aslan, the manager. I spoke to him. I told him the results of my sound reading. And as a result, I issued license premise violation number 05950 to Bijou for loud amplified music emanating into the abutting building after 11 p.m. at 63 decibels. And those essentially are the facts.
Great. Thank you very much. Attorney Miller, would you like to please address the incident?
I have some questions for the sergeant.
Absolutely.
So, Sergeant, do you recall what night of the week this was?
I believe it was a weekend night, sir.
I think, if I could help, I think it was a Saturday night.
Yes.
And the when you arrived at in the area, was it busy that night? Was it crowded with lots of cars on the street, lots of people walking around?
Yes, sir, it was busy.
And you have, when you took the reading, what did you use for that reading?
We have a department issued sound meter.
Could you just describe it a little bit, the brand or what?
Sir, I don't have it in front of me. It's a two-name, it's a big German-made sound device that we recently had calibrated, and it's pretty good.
Okay, thank
Not
you.
the iPhone.
Huh? Not the
It's not the
iPhone
phone.
anymore?
No, it's not the iPhone. We do use that, and the results are pretty much the same, but this device is a lot more trustworthy, and like I said, it's been recently calibrated.
So your report says when you arrived, you could hear the hum of the base cabinets coming from Bijou.
Not on the street, sir, up on the 10th floor, we could hear it.
Not on the street, but on the 10th floor.
Correct.
Did you take any other readings in the building to determine what the ambient noise would have been coming from the street, regardless of whether Bijou was playing music or not?
We did, sir. Well, I try my best to wait for lulls in the traffic because there is a lot of car traffic down below. And we try to zero in specifically on the music and noise coming from the club. For instance, if it's a green light and you have a swath of cars going by, I don't do the sound reading. I wait for quiet can be, then I conduct the reading.
And so have you been at Bijou and at this building in the past taking readings?
Yes, sir, I have.
Approximately how many times?
Sir, I'd say
Too many to count?
I'd say yes, yeah. Let's put that.
I didn't want to put words in your mouth, Sergeant. I'm sorry.
So it's been going on for a couple of years. I'd say in the last year or so, I've conducted at least 3 to 4 readings in the building in the last year alone.
Okay. I don't have any further questions for the sergeant.
Thank you. Did you have witnesses who are going to provide testimony to the division?
Yes, so I sent over to Rebecca, or I think, Rebecca's there. So I sent over in the police report, when the sergeant spoke to Mete Aslan, he said that we had a sound engineer in on Friday, and that would be Mr. Tabiri, who's on. And so Sergeant suggested that we keep copies of the report, obviously with his reports. So I sent over those reports with there's a summary on the front from Mr. Tabiri, and also the reports and his readings. So Mr. Tabiri, I know there you are. Could you just briefly summarize how many times you were at the site and what the results of your readings were?
Sure. I was at the site on the morning of the 28th. We were taking some readings with a Quest Sand Pro audio meter, which was factory calibrated. We went basically to try to take some readings of what was coming from the property. The readings we took were based on 10-minute intervals. We first had the sound system off, and then sound system on for a period of about 20 minutes or so. That's the first session, session 1. We took readings, and the average reading was the time weighted average was 42. The L10 level, which was 68.6, but most of that was basically, as everybody probably is aware, is driven by the street noise. It is a very busy area there. So, and the meter does not identify specific sounds or noises from the frequencies, the one that I had. So that was one of the disadvantages I had in the system I have. Based on the noise levels that morning, we kind of felt that it would probably be more prudent to come on an evening when the club is open. So the evening of the 30th, we went to the club a little bit before it was open. We set up the sound meter up at the roof again on a tripod at the back corner. And we set it up for basically the same system. We were getting a TWA of a 45 and a L10 level of a 67. Again, though, the disadvantage again was a lot of the noise was basically from the background noise of the streets. It was, even at that hour, it was pretty busy. The last thing we did do, though, we had access to a tenant on the 7th floor at the Ava complex. We went to his unit about 10, a little bit after 10:30. We brought the meter upstairs for some quick readings in that area there. We ended up with some dBA levels of, the L10 level was only at 57 and the TWA level was at 13. The readings we were getting were, with the windows closed, were around in 40s, 44, 45. And then we did some with the windows open at 50, 55 at that night. That evening was the, I believe, the 30th. It was a Friday night and it was about between 10 and 10:30.
And so your meetings, you heard the sergeant, and he said he's got a new calibrated system. If you had readings, and it's obviously it was a different time at night for the sergeant and a different night. And, I'm guessing, and I don't know the first thing about this, but I'm guessing that maybe weather conditions might affect sound a little bit. I don't know, but based on your readings, and this was on the 7th floor, is it possible that sound gets louder as it goes up?
Not to belittle the physics, but it typically does not, but I would probably defer to my expert, Jeffrey, who's on the phone call today, to help with that question.
Okay. All right. Madam Director, do you have any questions for Mr. Tiberi?
Yeah, thank you. I'm sorry, did someone have their hand up?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna jump in first with a couple of questions for the sound person. So I just want to make a note for the record, these sound readings were taken on a different night, but they're very technical for me to sort of process. Mr. Tiberi, can you just break down for me TWA level, L10 level, and with that sort of a simplified version of that, so I could kind of wrap my head around it a little bit better.
Okay, we'll give it a shot unless Jeff wants to jump in for me, but well, the max level is obviously the maximum level, and that a lot of times that's driven by perhaps like the sergeant said, the siren going off, or these days these kids have cars that the sound system in the car is probably bigger and more amplified than the sound system in the club. So that would be the peak. But what this particular meter does is it takes that over a period of time and averages out for a weighted average over an 8-hour period. This type of meter is most driven for OSHA standards, if you will. So that average is the time weighted average is the average over the period of time, but the meter was reading the dBA levels. The L10 level, which is a reference to the zoning requirement where you're supposed to have documented the 10% level of the noise range in the 10%, over 10%. And I believe that's in the zoning regulations for the city of Boston.
Could you just explain that so I can understand what you're saying, the 10%?
Lauren, we're just gonna try to follow the rules of our hearings, and I'm gonna ask the questions first, let them answer, and then we can have witnesses testify, just to keep it clear, because we're taking notes and it's important for our decision. It's not really a conversation or a meeting, it's a hearing.
Thank you.
Jeff, correct me if I'm wrong, but the L10 is in the zoning district requirement showing that where the noise exceeds on the average of 10%.
Yeah, so this is Jeff Fullerton, and the L10 level is actually used for assessing noise from construction sites. So in this case, I'm not sure we can turn to that level. More typically, people would look at that LEQ level as the average level that is measured.
So Jeff, do you want to introduce yourself to the director? Since you're now testifying, and I know you're sworn. Jeff,
Sure.
you're with a company called what?
Intertech.
And you want to give that again? I'm sorry, I was talking. Will you give that again for the director?
Sure. My name is Jeff Fullerton. I am an acoustical consultant working for the company called Intertech. We are right here in downtown Crossing. I've had a chance to visit the facility and basically working with Ron to provide additional support on the acoustical side of things, and also to assess the conditions in case further reductions are needed.
And so there was a question I asked, based on the reports that Ron had, is it possible that sound that the readings taken on the 7th floor could be louder on the 10th floor?
Sound can behave in unique ways, but one thing to focus on here is everybody's talked about this being low frequency sound, and low frequency sound tends to dissipate in a spherical manner. And so as you go further away, it decreases in strength. So going from a lower level to a higher level typically is going to result in a reduction.
Okay. And you've been brought in to assist Mr. Tiberi in assessing the situation and assessing what other steps can be taken to alleviate this issue that Miss Ingram has complained about, the bass.
Correct.
And you're continuing to review the facility and coming up with some ideas to do that.
Correct. We're looking at the sources of sound that the club is generating and seeing what are the paths in which that source of sound could radiate to the exterior, and identifying ways in which mitigation might be implemented to reduce those transmission paths. So we had a visit a week and a half ago and had the chance to see the facility, see the speakers, see the conditions, visit the rooftop. We haven't been in the AVA building, so I don't have assessments from inside the AVA building, and we haven't been there during the usage of the club. But from running the system in a sound level similar to with the club being operated, we had the chance to experience that.
Is it possible, in this particular case, the sergeant was on the premises and could feel a hum of the bass, a hum from a bass? Is it possible that it could be from another source than the club?
It's a good question. Low frequency sound can be generated by a variety of things. The club is certainly generating sound from subwoofers, but people are driving around with subwoofers in their cars. Not quite as big, but certainly can produce loud levels. I would say at this point that I haven't experienced it in the building, but certainly everything that I've seen so far would lead me to believe that the sound that is heard in the residences is likely to be mainly the low frequency sounds.
Madam Director, I don't know if you have questions, because I want to just next bring on Mr. Aslan if you have questions for either one of the sound engineers.
I may, you can continue. I'm just trying to process all of this. It's very technical.
Okay. I'm just looking, there you are. I'm sorry. So Mete, you're at the club virtually every night, is that correct?
Yes.
And so you're aware of the complaints from the neighboring building, from the abutter in the neighboring building, and those complaints seem to be focused on the base. So I have a couple of questions for you. What steps have you taken? What levels have you changed the bass sound in the club from to, and just in general terms?
So the last hearing that we had, we were told to keep it at -9, the base input or output per se. And since Lauren was complaining, we even moved it down to the -12. And but apparently she still had a problem with it. So we keep turning the volume down, the bass down, but we just keep doing it every night and all night long. And it's never enough.
Do you have a sound meter in the club?
Yes.
Do you take readings regularly during the night?
We do. I have this one.
Okay.
Can you see it?
Huh? I don't know. Does that look like yours, Sergeant?
It does.
Yeah.
Ours is a little different, but yeah, same setup.
So, and you take the readings in the club regularly during the night?
We do. I think it was a couple of weeks ago, we got a complaint. Lauren stated that it was very loud in her apartment, and we were in the office, which is inside the club, and we were reading at 68 inside the club in our office, and she was, I think, in the 70s. I'm not sure exactly what number it was, but she stated that it was irrelevant that we were in the office and the sound was moving up, and in her apartment, it was in the 70s.
Since this has occurred, you've engaged both Mr. Taveri and Mr. Fullerton from Intertech to not only come and take readings, but also I guess develop some possible solutions. And let me ask another question. Over the last 2 years, 3 years, how much have you spent on soundproofing?
Without Mr. Tiberi and Jeff, around a little over $200,000.
Okay. And you're still committed to work with Mr. Tiberi and Mr. Fullerton to see if there's further solutions?
Absolutely.
How long have you been at the club? How long have you been working there?
Since it opened, 2011, June.
2011. Was the building built after that? Was the
Yes.
building was built after the club? So,
3 years after us, maybe 4 years after us, I'm not sure.
okay.
And just one more thing, Steve, when we did the reading with Ron on that, I think it was the 30th, he said, we actually had the bass at 0 at full level, and we had it very loud, just to kind of get a better reading. And then we moved it back down to -9 during after his sound session was over.
Okay. I don't have any further questions of Mr. Aslan, and I think just so you know, Madam Director, Mr. Tam, who's that actually property owner, is just monitoring this hearing. Also, so I don't have any questions for him, and I didn't plan to have him testify, but he asked if he could just monitor the hearing.
Okay, I'm just gonna put on the record. This is a disciplinary hearing and we take this very seriously. The licensee has obviously hired an attorney and sound technicians. I wanted to make sure I can retain control over this hearing because there is a lot at stake if they are found to be in violation. So I know there's someone that has to leave. We have put in the chat the email that they can submit their written testimony. I want to continue with the flow of the hearing because there's a lot of information that was just shared. Mete, did you ever, I think at one of the last hearings, I had suggested in my written decision that Bijou share a 24-hour cell phone number with the tenants of the building that were having sound issues. Did that ever happen?
Sorry, I was trying to unmute myself. Yeah, she has all my information, so
Does she call when there are sound issues?
she emails usually. And I think you guys are on the email. I believe Rebecca's on the email and Sergeant Gallagher is on the email also.
So you get them in real time and you can respond to them in real time.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, as much as I can, because, you know, I'm not always on my phone. I'm running around in the club also, but as much as I can, I do.
Okay, and have you ever compared the sound reading from your office to the sound reading in, let's say, Lauren's apartment?
No.
Okay.
I don't think I've been into her apartment once, I think years ago.
Okay, and I'm assuming Mr. Tam, who's joining us and observing tonight, is aware of the sound issues that are going on in this building and the effect it's having on the
Absolutely.
building. Okay. Let's see. Rebecca, I'm just looking over your notes here. So for the record, the licensee hasn't gone up into the complaining abutters units to observe the sound or to do tests from there, right?
Not to Lawrence, but we've been to 702
Okay,
apartment number. He's right above us and he's given us access to his apartment to get readings.
okay, thank you. And then my other questions are for Sergeant Gallagher. You had, I think, testified that the sound isn't necessarily loud when you're in Bijou, but you can definitely feel it and hear it when you're in the apartment. Is that correct?
Pretty much, ma'am. Inside Bijou, it's a different story. It is a loud club inside, but out street level, we don't hear it. I've been in the building a couple of times. For instance, we've been in the gymnasium, which is, I believe, the 3rd floor. We have not been able to hear anything. I've gone up to the 10th floor and I believe the 25th or 22nd floor. And that was probably in the last or second before that incident. And the decibel levels were the same between the 10th and the 22nd.
Okay, and this question, I guess, is for Bijou. On the night of October 2nd, when this incident report was written, what kind of music or who was the performer? Was it a DJ? Just so I have that.
Yes, it was a DJ.
Is it somebody who plays frequently at Bijou or has played before?
It's a resident DJ that plays every Saturday night.
Every Saturday night, okay. So is it true to say the DJ is aware of the sound issues?
Absolutely.
And is the DJ cooperative when you ask him to turn the sound down?
Yes, so I'm in a group text with the DJ, my sound guys that are in the DJ booth with him. So I will message them. I'll be like, we got a complaint. Can you lower the volume? Can you lower the bass? So everybody's on the same page.
Okay. All right, those are all the questions I have for right now. I may have more after the public testimony.
Thank you. We'll move to Ms. Ingram. You've already been sworn in. Did you have additional testimony about the specific incident in question that you would like to provide to the licensing division today? Oh, you're muted right now.
All right, I do have specific testimony. I'm I hope I can remember all my thoughts because there was a lot to respond to as well as to speak to about my experience. So some things to note. I have been having issues with the sound for the duration of my tenancy. There was some improvement with the last manager, Jamie. He was very responsive, and I had his phone number. And when the sound was an issue, he would work to keep it in line. Now, I often still did have to proactively reach out to him. By the way, this is not the normal level of non-sound dampening. I broke the hinge on my window like a week ago, so I can't close it all the way. So I have to get that fixed. So my window's open right now. But that is not typical. Wait for the engine to pass. Anyways, so since Jamie left, the problem has gotten much worse. I've noticed instances where I have reached out to Mete and sometimes the sound improves, and that tends to be on nights when the licensing unit is working, but the licensing unit does not work every night. I have noticed some occasions, and I've even mentioned in an email to Mete that after I contacted him, the sound volume increased, and I objectively measured that with a decibel meter, sound analysis app that actually breaks everything into frequencies. So to kind of speak to a little bit of what the sound engineer said, I can tell what is the bass and what is not because it's showing, and generally in the 40 to 60 hertz range, the sound is popping, and I can see when I have it on the fast measurement as opposed to like impulse weighting, the fast weighting, I can actually see the rhythm of the bass. And I know it's not other cars externally because certain nights, I don't know what kind of music night it is, but the tempo just seems to stick around 110. I've also been able to notate the bass line and send that over. I've been able to hear the bass line while in my shower with the water on. So the sound level is very significant. It is very disruptive. It keeps me from sleeping. It keeps me from relaxing. I cannot enjoy my apartment. I cannot listen to music, even if I'm trying to stay awake or watch a movie. It's very distracting. And other residents have noticed that as well. Couple things I wanted to point out. There's been a lot of talk about -9 decibel override and -12 decibel override. Wait, down here. That override is only relative to the input. So you can have an override of -9 and increase the input by 20 decibels, and it's louder than it was even with the override. So that's really irrelevant. Another major thing that is important the licensing board to consider is that the sound professionals that came in, I don't question their qualifications whatsoever, but they came in on a night at the club's request, and the club was able to set the levels at the levels they wanted it to be. Now, if we go back and look at the records, I'd be curious to see if they received 911 calls about the noise on the nights that they're speaking to and saying, this is what's happening with the sound. I remember when Mete had said, we had someone yesterday and the sound is fine. I don't think I had called BPD that night. I think it had been quiet. So a more accurate representation would be an unannounced sound reading by an independent evaluator. Something else. Yeah, so the continuous equivalent measurement of the sound, that kind of, it doesn't really provide insight into what I'm experiencing because the issue is really the impulse of the sound. And part of the thing is that it's just so continuous for so long. And if we think of things, saying, oh, well, it was only 55 decibels, the limit can be 50. It's meant to be 50 outside, so it can be brought down inside. I have measured it up to 70 in my apartment when Sergeant Gallagher was here. When this violation was written up, my windows were closed and we were in the middle of the room. So we were about, 8-10 feet from the windows. Another thing to point out, I heard that the sound readings, if they were taken in 702, that apartment does not have windows that face Bijou in this L shape that Bijou has previously referred to as like an echo chamber. They wouldn't be affected, people in 702. It's going to mostly be the people in the 05 units. I've heard it the worst. I'm in an 05. 07, there's been a lot of complaints from that. Less likely to have complaints is the 03 units, which is on a different area. So anything from 02, they're not going to hear the sound. Let me just, I wrote a couple other notes. Just in terms of the age of the building and who was here first. There's a building on the other side that's been there since, I don't know, 100 years old or something. And I don't really think that's a relevant conversation because there are people who live here and there is the decibel limit under after 11 p.m. That's in effect for a reason. And I do also want to make a point. I know there's been a request for sound readings to be taken with my windows closed. But if it was 49 decibels of repeating bass at 40 hertz, and that's under the sound limit with my windows closed, it would be impossible to relax or sleep, especially sleep. I might be able to relax, but not sleep. The windows are there to bring the sound down further. So I'm a little confused as to why the readings need to happen with the windows closed, because the windows are there to protect us and break down the outside sound, not to say, oh, well, the sound should be more than 50 decibels outside. And just another thing to consider is that, yeah, the decibels is a logarithmic scale. If you think of earthquakes, for instance, you know, like a Richter scale of 5, it's not half of what a 7 is. Like 7 is exponentially worse than a 5. So it's just similar to that, where, you know, some people might say we're talking about 5-10 decibels. It's actually 5-10 decibels is, you know, more than double when we're talking about 50 decibels. One other note I just want to look at briefly. And just a note too that the bass is felt more than heard. It can sometimes be heard, but it can also be felt. So earplugs do nothing against the bass. So I don't really have further mitigation methods that I can take. And then lastly, I would have liked to invited more residents to attend to get a more fuller representation of what's happening in the building. But the current building management has not been willing to share information about hearings or even send out, you know, a list with the email of my name. And I have a written record of that. I have my own thoughts as to why that might be, but that's not happening. So it's really impeding the ability to get information out to residents. Last night, finally, at 1 a.m, I went and I put some flyers on doors, and in that short amount of time, I did get a couple emails. And let me just read those. These are from people I have not spoken to before.
Were those people there on the night of this incident?
They may or may not have been home. I'm not sure
So
about
this
that.
is specific to October 2nd.
Okay.
I'm trying to stay focused on this. There, you know, this is a hearing with rules and process, so.
So I'm
these
wondering then
email
how,
comments can be sent to the Mayor's Office of Consumer Affairs and Licensing as well at mocal@boston.gov. We put that into the chat.
okay. So I guess I'm wondering, you know, if I have a problem, it feels very hard for some reason to prove my case. I was really discouraged at the last hearing that even though objective data was provided, a violation was not found because the sound was turned down later. It's not possible for the licensing unit to come every night that there's an issue, take
No, it's not.
write up a violation, go next door, give the club a violation. Yeah, it was great that they turned it down once they got the violation, but that's not reasonable. There's 2 officers for the entire city and they only work 2/3 of the time. And they can't be here. There have been so many times I've called Sergeant Gallagher. I mean, there was a recent Sunday, I think I said, hey, listen, like we have this hearing coming up. Can you come back so we can get some more data? And he said, you know, I'm swamped. I have to be at these other places. And then this past Sunday, it was really loud. It was quieter during the weekend when they were working. And then Sunday when they weren't working, it was louder.
I know,
And-
Lauren, they're assigned to this board, so I do know that. And
Oh, yeah, no.
sound is one of many
that's-
issues that they deal with, but
Yeah.
I'm just not clear. I know you send emails to Mete, but do you call him in real time? I know you call Gallagher, but do you ever call him and say, hey, I can't sleep right now, could you turn it down?
Thank you for asking. I actually, I meant to respond to that. I did not hear from Mete after the last meeting with his phone number, and I'm not aware of.
Oh, I think she froze.
I think we've lost Ms. Ingram. Yep.
She has my phone number for years now. So I didn't think she needed it again. She's messaged me in the past, so.
Why don't we make sure
Okay.
I misplaced it? or
If not, I could just send it to her again, but she has texted me in the past, so she definitely has my number.
Or if you want to send it to us and we'll make sure she gets it.
Yes.
Again.
And Attorney Miller, could you send to me a chronological list of the soundproofing measures your client has put into place in the last several years? I just want to make it clear that this is not unique to Bijou or not unique to this neighborhood. We have people living in neighborhoods throughout the city that as development comes along, sound changes, it bounces off buildings. We deal with this in the Fenway, with Fenway concerts. We deal with this in South Boston, in the Seaport, with the venues out there too. So the reason why I am trying to gather this information, Lauren, is that we have progressive discipline. It's not like we shut someplace down because people are upset about they couldn't sleep a couple of times. Like, we are also trying to balance the interests of our businesses in the city. And it changes. Buildings pre-exist other buildings. People move in during a pandemic above a bar. I'm not saying that's what happened here, but this is a real scenario that's happened. We deal with this every day. We deal with, estate licensed premises investing tons of money to help with dampening windows and in other parts of the city. So I'm trying to gather the information. And if you would like to submit your neighbors' experiences in writing, that would be helpful. I'm really trying to stay focused on the technical part of this right now. So I'm trying to figure out what can be done, what hasn't been done, and how I can play a role in making your life a little bit better in your own house. So you froze, but we're going to ask Mete to send us his 24-hour contact, which he stated when you were frozen that you've had, but I'm going to assume you misplaced it, and ask that you not just call Gallagher, that you call Mete. I'm not saying
I see
don't
in
call
real time,
Gallagher.
Rebecca just emailed it to you, Lauren, so you should have his phone number now as well.
I'm not saying don't call Gallagher, but it's hard to help with the solution if Mete is running around trying to do his job and doesn't realize you emailed him until after the fact.
Yes, by the way, my computer ran out of battery, so that's why I froze and I did not hear probably about 45 seconds or a minute what happened. It's possible that I received Mete's number long in the past. I do not recall receiving it after the last hearing, which you had requested, and you requested it be sent out to residents. I'm not aware of any residents who were provided with contact information.
And I would like Attorney Miller for the board to have a copy of the correspondence that Bijou sends to the management company and to the tenants, so that we know for sure that you've delivered Mete's phone number to anyone in that building.
Thank you.
Okay.
Director Joyce, do you have any further questions for Ms. Ingram, or should we see if there are any other folks who would like to provide testimony.
How long have you lived there, Lauren?
I've lived here 6 years.
Okay.
And just one other note, a resolution to the problem that has been proposed is that Mete, I've heard both firsthand and third hand, have you thought about moving? Moving is a huge burden and not something I'm in a place to do right now. And I don't think that's a reasonable request for an establishment to tell neighbors to move.
Do you know how old your unit is, like the windows?
The building was built in 2015.
Okay. That's helpful.
Yeah.
I don't have any other questions.
Thank you. Are there any other individuals with firsthand knowledge of the alleged incident of October 2nd who wish to testify who have not yet done so? Oh, I see a hand raised from Lou L. I do not believe you've been sworn in yet. Could you please identify yourself?
Oh, yeah, sure. I'm the current resident of 1107.
Sorry, what is your
And,
name?
Oh, my name is Lou.
Okay, could you please raise your right hand? You have not been sworn in yet. Thank you. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yeah.
Great, thank you. Please provide your testimony to the licensing division.
So I basically can corroborate what Lauren just said. But everybody has like the individual differences, so it doesn't impact me as much as Lauren's because everybody has like a different health condition, but it does like, it's loud and it occasionally impacts like my sleeping schedule and yeah, pretty much that's it.
Thank you.
I just have a question for Lou. Does your unit face Bijou?
I think so. And just another piece of information. So I lived at 2905 before. I believe the situation was a little bit better there, but I moved to 1107. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you. Are there any other individuals with firsthand knowledge of the October 2nd incident who wish to testify who have not yet done so?
Could I just point out, Mr. Secretary, did Lou say that she was there on October 2nd, that she's corroborating October 2nd?
You did not. Lou, are you able to tell us whether or not you were present on October 2nd, which is the incident in question, the subject of today's hearing?
I think it happened pretty frequently, but I can say that yeah, it also happened. It bothered me on October 2nd, and yeah, I'm not sure if you need any other information.
Could I ask another question? Have you filed any complaints with the building or with the city of Boston about this issue?
Yes, but not on October 2nd. I filed like a complaint before and the problem remained like unresolved. So probably I just didn't have like that much efforts and time like investing in this thing.
So you filed complaints with the building?
I call like the number for the noise complaint before, and I also call 911. And I believe I met like someone from the police department and they like came to my apartment, I believe in this summer. Yeah, but I didn't file a complaint on October 2nd, even though it bothered me somehow.
I was just asking about any time, and police visited your apartment,
Yeah,
and that was during the summer.
yeah, and I think so. And if I recall correctly, the club like was pretty loud before the police like stopped by. Yeah.
And the police also visited me on that evening, as well as another tenant named Sammy Wood, who is all the way up on, I believe.
We don't even know what, I'm sorry, just so we're clear, we don't even know what evening we're talking about.
We could, I can look at my records and find it, but I just want to note that on that evening, Sergeant Gallagher did let Bijou know that he was coming before he arrived. And so we all noticed, the 3 residents in the 3 apartments we went to, that it was quieter than typical. And so it seems to be because there was a heads up, maybe the volume was turned down. So normally it is louder than was experienced that night. I think for to get really accurate representations, it has to be when there's no notification given, so that's a typical night. And actually, because of that experience, the one resident, Sammy, just kind of gave up on trying to solve it. She feels hopeless because she's experiencing the problem but can't get the data.
Rather than you testify for somebody else, it would be best if.
I'm just gonna,
Yeah,
I'm
thank
gonna
you.
jump in. I think I have all the information I need relative to this particular incident. And with that, I think that concludes today's hearing.
Thank you. I'll get you the information, Madam Director, that you requested.
Thank you. The
Can I
executive director will take this matter under advisement and will issue a written decision.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Because my Zoom crashed, I lost the chat. Is it possible to just send me that or the information that was provided with email addresses?
The information that was provided was the phone number, which was also emailed to you by Rebecca.
Oh, there was
Sure.
one that was an email address in the chat.
There, MoCal, MOCAL at boston.gov.
Thank you. And what office is that for?
That's the Mayor's Office of Consumer Affairs and Licensing, the office that held this hearing today.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. That will adjourn today's hearing. Thank you, everybody.